President Trump appears to have revealed a federal law enforcement operation to deport undocumented families living in the U.S. CNN reports that there were not a lot of happy faces at the Department of Homeland Security with this revelation. This morning, though, senators have reached a deal to address the humanitarian crisis at the border. What does that look like? Joining us now to talk about all of this is Republican Senator Shelley Moore Capito. She's a member of the Senate Appropriations Committee that had this emergency funding. Senator, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Good morning, Allison.
First things first. Yesterday, President Trump's late night announcement about deporting millions of undocumented people, even families that are here in the U.S. Do you think that this is the way to go? Is this the right strategy for stopping the crisis at the border?
Well, I think what you're going to see us voting today in the Appropriations Committee is where we feel the greater emphasis needs to be, and that is with the Border Patrol at the southern border. We are at a crisis. We are overwhelmed with those 133,000 people that came across last month. That's what you're going to see reflected in the emergency appropriation that we're going to do. So I think that's where the better consensus is among Republicans and Democrats where we need to meet the crisis.
And before we get to the appropriations, because I really do want to hear about what that money is going to go to, but are you saying that the president should not redirect the Border Patrol agents to begin deporting the millions of undocumented people that he announced he would start deporting next week?
You know, I think we need to still do internal enforcement, but I think the greatest amount of our resources, manpower and other resources need to be at the border because that's where we're sort of breaking apart at the seams. So I would rather see our dollars, and that's what you're going to see reflected, move towards those kinds of efforts. Yes.
Last question on this. Do you think the plan is going to happen next week? I mean, given that, do you think the president is going to go through with the plan that he announced?
You know, I think he's going to have a hard time enforcing that with the way we're seeing lack of resources, lack of people to be able to enforce the numbers of children that we see coming across, which takes a greater amount of people and resources to be able to care for them properly. I think we need to still look in this country, and those folks, particularly the ones that are breaking the law again, need to be and already face deportation notices, need to be removed from the country, yes, but the border is where I want to put my focus.
Okay, so let's talk about this emergency funding. This was a bipartisan effort, which is encouraging that Democrats and Republicans are coming together to do something at the border. $4.6 billion. How will that solve the problem of migrants coming to the border?
Well, let's look at what we're doing right now. Right now, we're holding children who are unaccompanied for longer than we really should. We should have them placed. We should have the resources through Health and Human Services to be able to place those children. This will give us those resources. We're also housing people in, and you've seen the pictures, in areas that are less than desirable. This will also provide the resources for us to do temporary facilities that I think match what our humanitarian philosophy is, better to take care of people while they're being processed. It also has medical supplies. It also has, you know, diapers and food and other things like that that we're finding because there's so many families, we're finding that we need the resources for. And those are the, we'll also have some IT in there that will help us go with quicker processing so we can move people to a better situation for them as they're waiting to have their cases heard.
And all of those things do sound like they will ameliorate the crisis. Yes. However, they don't sound like they will address the root cause. And so how does spending the $4.6 billion here on beds and on helping kids address the fact that so many in unprecedented numbers, at least since 2006, are showing up at the border? Would the $4.6 billion be better spent in Guatemala and in Honduras, rather than cutting aid to those countries, to try to solve some of the violence and the problems that are happening there that are causing the influx of migrants?
Well, I think that's what the president tried to address last week or 2 weeks ago when he forged the agreement with Mexico, saying to Mexico, we need more help, your help, more robust help. And that's what I think Mexico has agreed to in terms of tightening up their southern border from those three countries that you mentioned, but also allowing us to work with Mexico to help us hold people, to try to deter the flood of people coming into this country. But the bottom line is we need to change our asylum laws. They are too loose. We're being taken advantage of. You see the children that are coming in as part of families, that is in reflection of, a very loophole part of our law that says you can only hold children for 20 days. So this is a bigger issue, yes. But right now, we need to meet the humanitarian crisis.
Yes, understood. But let's be clear, the enforcement, Mexico's enforcement also doesn't address the root problems, and the president is cutting funding to those three countries.
We're still working with those countries to try to, and I think in some of the immigration bills that you're going to see coming forward, working with those countries to allow people to declare for their asylum before they actually leave the country. Trying to work with them to find a system where if you are under tremendous duress in your country and you can no longer, you're no longer safe to stay in your country, to have that option. But the flood of people that we see coming now, it's obvious to me and many others, and I think reflected in our bill, this has got to be addressed and it's got to stop.
Very quickly, the whole ugly and embarrassing episode with Patrick Shanahan, do you think there's a vetting problem?
I just read that yesterday, and quite honestly, it's shockingly so, and a sad story, really, for his family and others related to that. I think the right thing was done. He stepped down and moved forward. I guess I'm a little surprised that it got as far as it did, but I know that the Secretary of the Army is a great guy.
I mean, he was Senate confirmed for the deputy position. So how do you think that the Senate missed it?
That I can't answer, and I think that's a good question.
Are you concerned that there's vetting problems with the White House's choices?
I think we've seen at times that it's maybe been too quick, and then folks have had to pull back, or the White House has pulled their nomination. That's troublesome, but I don't think that's the first time that's ever happened. I think that we need to find great leaders in all these areas. I think the president's trying to find that and has great leaders now. I would like to see the vetting be more in depth, of course, so that these things don't come up at the last minute. But the right thing was done here. He pulled his nomination, and we're moving forward.
Senator Shelley Moore Capito, thanks so much for being on to explain everything that happened last night with the funding for the crisis at the border. Great to talk to you.
Great, thanks.
John.